What a treat it is to be joined by one of our favorite voices in the game. And if you're watching on YouTube, you get to see his lovely face as well. It's Brian Anderson, broadcaster for the Milwaukee Brewers and many other things. But Brian, we're going to talk about the Milwaukee Brewers today. Welcome to Baseball Barbacast.
Oh, man. What an honor to be here. Can't wait to get this started.
When did you first start to get recognized for your voice? Like how,
I don't
when
think
in
that's
your
happened
career
yet.
did that happen? No, get out of here. Get out of like in Milwaukee, if you walk in somewhere and you like order a coffee, is the barista ever like,
No, here's the actual interaction that happens most often. Oh, you sound like the guy from the Brewers. Yeah, I'm Brian Anderson. Oh, you seem so much taller on television.
ooh.
Short Kings, man.
They say that about Caleb Durbin too.
That's right.
Yeah,
now
that's
I am the
fine.
president of the Short Kings Brewers, who are dominating Major League Baseball. No,
That's
it's
true.
good. I think the CC Sabathia years that was when kind of, I used to get called Matt Vasgersian a lot because he was the announcer in Milwaukee. Two announcers prior to me, it was Matt Vasgersian, Darren Sutton, and then me. So I still get things shouted at me like, "Hey, Craig Kashawn," or "Hey, Matt Vasgersian." So it's all good.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing, Brian. You have been doing this in Milwaukee for a long time, and I think you are qualified not just because it is still your job and you get to call Brewers games all the time, but you have seen this Brewers experience in several different iterations. If I'm not mistaken, your first season there was 2007. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. So, and since 2007, the Brewers have been one of the most successful teams in Major League Baseball, at least in the regular season. We know that in the postseason, it has not been quite as successful, but you have seen a lot of very, very compelling, fun, lot of wins in the regular season. That has happened many times before. But this season feels a little bit different, and we have no idea what's going to happen in October. But as someone who has watched many runs to the playoffs for Milwaukee, what does feel meaningfully different about this run?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've been asked that a lot about, this is my 19th year with the Brewers, and prior to that, I was with the San Antonio Spurs. So I've been really lucky to have been a part of winning franchises. The Spurs won 4 titles, 4 of their 5, while I was there as their sideline reporter and working in that organization. Then I came to the Brewers, and pretty much every year I've been here since 2007, they have been competitive. So it's usually come down to September, even the years they didn't make it, the Ken Maka years as manager, they were still competitive in September. They were still in a pennant race. But this team, I've never seen anything like this team. I don't know what the postseason's going to look like. That is to be determined. There are a lot of guys on this team that haven't been in a postseason scenario. I think they're going to be good, but it's all about who gets hot. So I want to keep that capsule in the regular season, but I've never seen anything like this from a Brewers team. Even the CC Sabathia run that I mentioned a moment ago, there was a lot of stress in that season. That was my second year. And, those who know the Brewers well know that they weren't even in the postseason until the very last day. They had a chance at a tiebreaker, but only because the Mets collapsed did the Brewers even make it in that year. So as a wild card, this is the old format when the wild card went into a division series. So yes, Sabathia was amazing and revisionist history and all of that should be a documentary, but that wasn't special like this. I mean, they just won 40 out of 50 games, and it's been an amazing ride to see with the land of the misfit toys and guys that nobody really knew. Certainly, we had to do our homework as the local broadcasters, figuring out who these players are, how they fit. What most of them are platoon type players, but they
which
just hit
one of
everybody.
them is Isaac Collins,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, he's the one at
Is it
third
that
base
one?
today or second base. Oh, he's going to be maybe the rookie of the year is the left fielder. I don't think that was on the bingo card at spring training.
Oh,
You have like
it's
10,
so good,
10
man.
different absurd rookie seasons to kind of sort through, I would say. Like for all different reasons, from Mizorowski to Durbin to Collins to Henderson to Chad Patrick. It's like on and on and on. You just don't know what's happening. And then, oh, here's Andrew Vaughn as Barry Bonds. All right, great. Now we have this. See, you say, Brian, you say this. I haven't seen this. And you can refer to just like the winning speaks for itself, the record, the stretch over these last couple months. But when you say this, what are we talking? Is it just the combinations of the players? Is it the fact that these players had low expectations and low track records? Is it just Pat Murphy? Is it, we are obviously going to ask you about Bob Uecker and just what he has meant, of course, posthumously to this season and what he already meant so much to this city. Give us a little bit more specifics about what this means.
Yeah, there's definitely the Uecker magic part of this. There's no question. I mean, I think that's from a spiritual standpoint, he's always with us, and he's going to always be a big part of Brewers baseball. He was the spine of Brewers baseball for so many years. So there is that piece, but that's also the galvanizing piece as well. And a lot of these players didn't know him that well, but they knew him well enough because Uecker was always in the clubhouse. So even the younger players, I remember Vin Scully at the end of his career, he just wasn't in the best health to go down to the clubhouse. He didn't go downstairs very often. So the players, while they heard Vin Scully, didn't know Vin Scully. That was not the case with Bob Uecker. He had a locker in the clubhouse. Like, he was down there every single day. So that piece still exists in a significant way. I would say I think the biggest part of this, and that's a really good question, Jordan, because what I feel and what I mean by that specifically is it's all of those things you mentioned and more. And I think big picture, if you want to pull out a little bit further, I think the Brewers are changing the game. So there are teams that have changed the game. Obviously, players in the NBA, Stephen Curry, changed the game to three-point revolution. I think the Brewers, and I don't know if it's going to carry on to the rest of baseball, it will certainly be the case in Milwaukee, because this is going to have to be how they play and perform and build rosters. But they're bringing baseball back the way I know it. And that means playing to win, playing to compete in every at-bat. And it gets a little touchy, and the analytics crowd comes at me a little bit, because I'm not saying analytics don't have a place. They do. Building rosters, putting the players together that fit or they think can fit, the versatility, all of that plays. But once you get in the room, then it's about the heartbeats and how can you get the most out of those players. So Pat Murphy, coaching staff, very good at that. Players are very good at that. The veteran guys, the Rhys Hoskins, Christian Yelich, 30 years ago, you were a rookie into a clubhouse, you felt like you were unwanted, you were unwelcome. That's not the case now. And I think those guys deserve a lot of that credit. So there's a style of play. It's not incentivized yet financially, but you got to remember the makeup of the Brewers are players who are trying to stay in the big leagues. So that's the incentive. So players who are trying to stay in the big leagues, that is the incentive to play this way. And that is doing all those little things that make baseball great. As I said, I think the Brewers are hopefully going to be the team that breaks the three true outcomes era of Major League Baseball. And I know that's going to be the case in Milwaukee, and that's going to be how they function moving forward. And I do think that it does play. Now, we'll see how it plays in the playoffs, because a team that plays hard and plays to win every at-bat and every sequence, that you lose that edge in the postseason, because every 100%. Team does that. And so that's my biggest concern.
The market inefficiency in a way here is giving a crap all the time.
Yes.
Right. And I think that you are right. That is a concern for how it translates to the playoffs. And we can talk about that in a second. But you bring up the point of analytics. And I think this is what is so fascinating to me about the Brewers on a big picture scale. This is not an old school organization, right? Like,
no.
Matt Arnold and before him, David Stearns, like, there is a big computer program in Brewers headquarters, literally called the Keg, by the way, which is like the best. It's the best model. It is a great model, and it helps them do a lot of things on the analytics side. And then they have like maybe the most old school coach manager running the show. And I think what is beautiful about what they do is it is a melding of these two things, right? And what inspires me about it, and you touch on this, is like they are showing that style of ball in this era can work and lead to wins.
Yes.
Right?
Great point. I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
And so this is a very analytic driven team. It has been under David Stearns, under Matt Arnold. Matt Arnold came from the Tampa Bay Rays. Obviously, there's a lot of DNA, and that still functions. That's still the way it is. I mean, there's a row of employees that are all into the computers and the analytics and part of the baseball ops and serve very important roles here. I think where the scales tipped was the hiring of Pat Murphy, sensing that, all right, we kind of have our Casey Stengel. This is an older Casey Stengel version of a manager who's kind of old school, has this college background, really good with young players, lifts up players, holds players accountable, but also can take a lot of the spotlight, a lot of the media responsibilities.
Yes.
Can hit on the entertainment piece that, like, ultimately, I talk to Matt Arnold about this all the time, by the way. We just had this conversation on the bus down from Milwaukee to Chicago. And we are in the entertainment industry. That's what needs to probably be pulled back. And the game was getting choked out for a while, and it became tedious. So much so, Major League Baseball set up rules to try to squeeze out some of the tedious nature of it. Well, I think the Brewers, their philosophy, and in an analytics mind, you're always looking for the margins. And I think Matt Arnold and his staff found that. And where are the areas we can thrive that others aren't even exploring? And that is with a payroll that's smaller, with players that are, unheard of or not known yet, older players as they go after these athletes, guys who have played multiple sports. So you see the pattern that's developing. That's where analytics comes in. But once they get into the room, Matt Arnold, probably more than any other analytics-minded general manager, has empowered his manager and his coaches and even his veteran players to run the clubhouse and perform in that way. And I think that's what's great, because the game doesn't get artistic and beautiful until the ball's in play. So again, like the 3 true outcomes, the ball wasn't in play much. It just, yes, we love homers and strikeouts and even walks at time, creating base runners, but it wasn't a pretty game for a while. And the way the Brewers play is very entertaining because you have athleticism, balls in play. I don't know how that's going to translate into the postseason, but I think all of that is in the discussion on how can we be different as an organization. So to your point, that's why an analytics combo with the old school teaching works, I think.
Yeah. Murphy as the character is just so singular in today's game. And as someone, I'm 29, Jordan's 30. We were not in clubhouses and in manager meetings in the era where it was more, there were like 12 Pat Murphys or 18 Pat Murphys, right? Where you would walk in and this is the thing that really strikes me. You walk into the room, he introduces himself to every single person in the room that he doesn't know every single day. Now, part of it, obviously, is he's performing a little bit. He knows he's funny. He knows that we know that he's funny, right? And but it is a singular experience of watching Pat Murphy operate like this soapbox of building up his team, putting down his players in public more than any other manager in the big leagues.
Yeah,
so
build up in private, put down in public. That's
put down in public. Like, it's a fascinating approach. So I guess, I know he's been around. He's been on the staff since 2015. I guess my question for you is, how have you seen Pat Murphy change over that time? How does Pat Murphy 2015 different than Pat Murphy 2022 versus Pat Murphy, the manager, 2025?
Yeah, I mean, that's he talks about his changes. Obviously, he's in charge now. So as the bench coach, he was the stirrer-upper guy, and he was also in that same role for Craig Counsell. So I would say the genius of Craig Counsell, knowing that Pat Murphy in a very serious clubhouse with a serious manager in Craig Counsell, a serious coaching staff, needed somebody like Pat Murphy. So all those years ago, he brought in Murph to be his bench coach. So that he deserves a lot of that credit. And Murph played that role to a T. Now Murph is in charge, and he wasn't in those big league clubhouses as a player. So he's not that guy. He's not the guy who has all this major league pedigree and can call back to the 70s or the 80s during his playing days. That's not what he has. So that he has a great respect for major league players, and that's where it starts. I think if you're a 25-year-old major league player on the Brewers, Pat Murphy will give you the fact that you've accomplished something that he didn't, and that's honorable. And I think right away that sets the playing field. But then he also says, but also I'm an observer of humanity, and especially baseball playing humanity, and I'm going to crack you when you are, have you heard about the checks? The checks
Oh,
game?
yeah. The check game.
So you probably know all about that. So we all are part of the check game. I've been checked before. So everybody, if you do something that is egregious or you feel like it's a me first thing, you get a check and he'll call it out in the middle of the clubhouse. And it's a very effective yet funny way to operate. And so there are changes. He'd be the first to tell you he's a different person post heart issue than he was prior to his heart attack. He knows his time is probably short, relatively speaking. I don't know what that, runway is going to be, but he knows he's 66 years old, going on 67, and he knows his time as a manager and in baseball is shorter than most, certainly shorter than a Craig Counsell. So there's all of that perspective, and he's just like your favorite uncle at the barbecue, who also can just fillet you and get a big laugh, but also a little bit of shame in there that kind of keeps everybody galvanized. And he's also the one that I think the players come around, that's our guy, but they can rally around it. It's the opposite of, say, the Bobby Knight syndrome, where Bobby Knight, his whole philosophy was, I'm going to have my team all hate me the same so they can at least be aligned on their hating of me. Murph's kind of the opposite of that.
Yeah. It reminds me, I don't know how much you watch like European soccer.
A little bit.
It is the main characters on any given team are way more often the manager.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the comparison in the States is like college sports, where it's like the job of the head person is to take the heat from the media off of the players. And a lot of that at times comes with singing and dancing. Like, oh, Murphy pulling the pocket pancake out. Like, that's a calculated but genuine choice, right? Like, that's not just like he's thinking about what he's doing. Jordan, I'll kick it to you.
So I want to finish with Yelich. I want to get back on the field, but something that I was not planning to ask you about, but just talking about Murph that I really feel like I've not seen talked about much or I read anything about is Ricky Weeks.
Yeah, dude.
I am fascinated by, like, this is someone who, of course, you watched his, I guess you weren't there at the very, very beginning of his career, but still, you saw Ricky Weeks as a player for a long time in Milwaukee. And I'm just curious where he kind of fits into this equation as this associate manager, what your sense is what is his persona within the clubhouse? How has this become a passion for him to get into coaching? And, just because, again, he's associate manager, there's not that many of those around the league. And for it to be him who has this great history as a player in Milwaukee, what your experiences with her as a player, if it's something you thought he was going to do someday, I'd love to ask about him because he's just not someone I've heard kind of talk.
See, this is why you guys who you are. Nobody asked me about Ricky Weeks. But he is such a part of the secret sauce.
Okay, I'm glad. And by the way, we can talk about Ricky Weeks, the player.
Absolute bullseye, Jordan, that you asked about Ricky Weeks.
Ricky Weeks, the player, is also something we could talk about for 2 hours. But let's because
one of my all-time favorites.
There's
a great image.
Legend.
Maybe you could post this later, but my favorite image, and it hung on the walls of the clubhouse for years, was Ricky Weeks taking a fastball to the jaw and not going down and not going out of the game. To the jaw.
Dude.
And there's a famous picture, Scott Paulus took, our photographer, of the impact of that baseball in his jaw. And that is the epitome of Ricky Weeks. He's one of my all-time favorite Brewers. I call him the Prince Fielder Whisperer. He was the only guy that could speak properly to Prince Fielder. You know, they go way back to their preteen days. They were in Orlando. And Ricky is just, not only is he a great dad, husband, family man, all of that, but man, he's as tough and no nonsense as it gets. He's got an incredible legacy of his family legacy. His grandfather was in the Negro League circle as a player. He has that DNA, old school DNA, tough, but also similar to Murph, just not as vocal, but similar. He can crack a player like that. And sometimes it's with force, sometimes it's just with an arm around you. And I think that is very intentional by Pat Murphy to put Ricky Weeks in that spot. That was, I asked Murph about that when he got the managerial job. If you remember, Pat Murphy's initial press conference introducing him as the manager, he had Ricky Weeks right next to him.
Yeah.
And
right,
that was not,
right.
I was like, wow, why is Matt Arnold making Pat Murphy's moment of truth in his whole life? Why is he having Ricky Weeks join him? And I asked Pat, well, that was a little odd. And he goes, no, I demanded that. Murph did. And because Pat, I think he looked at the coaching staff. He knew he's got a ton of workers and great, talented builder-upper teachers of players, all of that. But what he didn't have was a guy who had been a star. And teams are still
There's not a lot of those on coaching staffs in general.
No, because they've all made so much money, and Ricky made a ton of money. He doesn't need to do this, but he loves the game. He's a dirtbag. He loves baseball. And so I think Murph looked around, and Ricky was in the Brewers system kind of sporadically popping in and out as a special assistant, but really enjoying it. And the reports were from players that he had an impact on were, man, Ricky Weeks kind of like made this go for me. So that was starting to be a common thing, very similar to Charlie Green in the bullpen when, he was a catching instructor coming up, and similar to Chris Hook as a pitching coach in the minor leagues, then a coordinator, similar to Rick Sweet, who's the AAA manager. So these were very common things that were surfacing up in the big leagues, like who had an impact? Oh, Ricky Weeks. Jace Peterson is in that role right now, by the way, if you want to put a pin in one. Jace Peterson is doing that role and having an impact. Carlos Villanueva is another guy. So Ricky has been this guy that is calm, but also has this like burn in him, and it. And he's good for Murph, and he's great for players, and he's especially great for star players. So namely Christian Yelich, and namely guys like William Contreras.
Perfect transition.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So, well, last thing on Ricky, that insight is awesome. When StatCast came out with the bat speed metric, I was like, oh, if only we had this for Ricky Weeks. Oh man, it would be so good.
Rake.
Like that's the guy. It's like no, I don't need the Barry Bonds exit velos. I mean, I do, but I need the Ricky Weeks bat speed.
I need fastball in on the hands. Ricky
this
Weeks
dude
couldn't get it by him, man. Couldn't.
Oh my goodness, what a special hitter. Okay, all right, let's get to Christian Yelich. Let's finish with him. Yeah.
Well, I have one more question before you do Yelich. I just want to know about the city of Milwaukee vis-a-vis the Brewers, because the Brewers fan base fascinates me. Because the amount of playoff success or lack thereof that they have had versus the amount of interest that the fan base has in the team and the media market size is unlike anything else in baseball, right?
Yeah.
And there's this embedded, like, oh, well, we're just going to lose in the playoffs again. That is also, wow, it's so nice outside in the summer. Let's sit in the parking lot and have a bunch of hot dogs. Sorry, have a bunch of brats. My apologies.
There you go.
And enjoy the Brewers, right? And it is such a unique like fan ideology. And I know you're not originally from Wisconsin, but can you kind of speak to what makes that so different? Because as someone who has not really been around it, I struggle to like put my finger on it exactly, but I just sense that there's this thing emanating from Brewers land that feels very unique.
Yeah. I mean, I love it here, and I love it for that reason. Again, 19 years. The first call I got when I got the job was from Ernie Harwell, which was the coolest thing ever. But he told me something. He said, you're going to love Milwaukee, and there's nothing like the Midwest sports fan, especially in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This is Ernie Harwell, who, Hall of Fame voice of the Tigers in the American League. Brewers used to be in the American League. He obviously had an affinity for Milwaukee. And I just kind of rattled me because I wasn't sure what I was getting into. But it was very similar in San Antonio. San Antonio thrived on the underdog ideology. And Milwaukee is that, it's that socially, it's that from a civic perspective with Chicago so close, kind of always, the little brother, the little sister. And I think that resonates, and that's a galvanizing piece too. And so when the Brewers, and you compartmentalize it into a regular season fun and entertainment versus like what happens in the postseason. Now, the Packers have had great success, and that's a different kind of thing. There's a great expectation typically that the Packers are going to be good, are going to perform. And if they win Super Bowls, it's a great moment, but also in a small way expected. And they've had great players. I contend, and we'll find out, if the Brewers win the World Series, for the city of Milwaukee especially, it would be a bigger victory for the fans than the Packers for the state of Wisconsin, because the Brewers are Milwaukee's team all throughout Wisconsin as well. But there is that piece to it. And there's this, it's a city of festivals. So there's a festival in the summertime atmosphere. You've got Summerfest, you've got the State Fair. You have these gathering places, these public spaces, and the Brewers are totally central to that in the summer. You also have a roof, so you're going to play. So now you have these massive crowds, which feels like a college football Saturday, 4 or 5 times a week. Could be a Wednesday afternoon, and the parking lot's full of shanties and cornhole and beers and brats. And that's a real thing. And that shocked me when I first got here. So it's a beautiful thing. And the 82 team, still the 80s. So, your childhood, those who have moved on from Wisconsin still refer back, and those are your core memories. And, I think that still plays with all of this. There's great history, but there's not great history of like winning. There's no World Series wins, but that's like, there are guys, there are teams that came up just short, and we're going to rally up with them. And that exists in a big way.
Like I live in DC now. I just spent 8 years in New York being around the Yankees, and like the Yankees, so often history feels like a backpack of rocks where it weighs on them all the time. And in this way, it almost like elevates the fan base, at least during the regular season. And just quickly to speak about Milwaukee, I saw Bon Iver at Summerfest a couple years ago. And it was my first time in the city. And oh my goodness gracious. For all of our listeners who have never been to Milwaukee in the summertime, it is sublime.
Me,
Jordan.
This is not just listener,
top
co-host.
5 city.
Dude, I've been trying to get there, and that's why I'm, very objectively rooting for the Brewers to get there. Finally, force me to get to Milwaukee. I mean, I live in the Midwest. I should make it happen. But you mentioned right, like that building it up, not just the regular season, and obviously there's a lot of pride. But when you go to the postseason 6 of 7 years, and you feel like you're always there, but it's not always quite getting close enough. That it only builds. I imagine. Yeah. The wanting and the just the anticipation to have a team like this, or the possibility to go farther. So
the case study is, and we saw this in Chicago in 2016. The case study is, if the Brewers win a World Series, what then? Because the journey of it and the angst of it and the hand wringing.
Totally.
Yes.
Those are the pieces that really, that's the glue. That's what kind of brings it all together. So,
and there's a couple teams like that you could say,
Red
Seattle,
Sox fandom,
San Diego. Like I've wondered that
like,
too, for sure.
Red Sox fandom and Cubs fandom is less interesting now to me.
I'm with you.
I'm not saying that those teams shouldn't have won for the sake of the joy.
It's not like those fans still don't care a lot. It's just different.
Yeah, it's just different.
It's just a different thing.
It's all right, let's long-suffering fan.
Yes, exactly.
We love the long-suffering fans.
Jordan's in Cleveland.
There's pride. Oh my God, Cleveland. Oh my goodness. Let me tell you.
How great was the postseason in Cleveland last year? Like, dude, I had the same conversations.
I saw you there,
BA.
Milwaukee. We were. Yes.
Yes. I mean, that's how. There's a great connection. Tom Hamilton and I, he's a Wisconsin guy anyway. So what you guys are hitting on right now, we talk about that all the time. Broadcasters do, because the storytelling part of this, the tavern of the game that we do every day. We're like literally talking to a bar full of 50 people in the middle of a broadcast, and there's this charm, and I actually love that about it. So I would love to see the Brewers win a World Series. Don't get me wrong. It would be amazing to see that happen. I would be very interested to see what would happen after. Again, back to San Antonio, they were always the underdogs. Phil Jackson put an asterisk on them for their championship in '99. But when they ripped off 5 and had this amazing era, things kind of changed a little bit in San Antonio. There was an expectation level. Now all of a sudden the Spurs rebuild and it's half full in the arena. And it's like, whoa,
right.
Now we got to win championships now to appease a fan base. So it's a real interesting dynamic that's going on.
We are, as people who just for some reason decided to become Buffalo Sabres fans, I think we can understand that is the kind of the fandom that we are attracted to.
We want
All right,
that.
we've gone really long with you, BA, but this has been so much fun. I do want to finish. We can keep it brief, but Christian Yelich is also a character on this Brewers team for this franchise that obviously means a lot. Someone who comes over in this trade in Miami, and I'm sure at that point he's like, all right, let's see what this is, this new place. Who knows what I'm going to become here, and then obviously what the player he is immediately for them, signs this huge extension, and now he's the guy, right? He's the superstar. We've seen his career kind of go some ups and downs, but now back to being kind of at a star level performer. How have you seen his kind of evolution since arriving as this skinny kid from the Marlins to being the guy? He's the face of the Brewers right now.
He definitely is, and I think every young player who comes to the big leagues, these guys who are experiencing Major League Baseball for the first time, or first, second, third year players, they owe Christian Yelich a debt of gratitude, because you could not have a better veteran guy face a franchise type. He hates that frame, and they asked us not to do that, but he is. And he is the big name, the guy who takes on the weight of it all, but he's a chill Southern Californian. He's very respectful. He's very aware. He knows guys who need the pickup. He knows guys who needs their balls busted. Like he's kind of the perfect guy for this market, and he's thrived here, and he loves Milwaukee, and he had 2 amazing years, signed the contract. The injuries started to play, but good for him that the back surgery, that's risky. That was a big decision. His career could have ended. Back surgeries aren't guarantees. He had the back surgery. He's kind of transferred into predominantly a designated hitter, which I think has extended him. And, I talked to him the other day, and he said he feels like he feels so good now that he thinks he could do another contract. And meaning he feels like he could keep playing. And you would not have been able to say that 2 and 3 years ago because of the pain and the way he has to prepare for a game just to be on the field. And so, I give him a ton of credit. I think he's been rejuvenated. He loves being in that. I think he finds it odd that he's in this leadership role. He doesn't think of himself as a 30s type player. But he is, and I think he knows that. So you can watch him catch himself walking through the clubhouse, where in the early days he was under that Ryan Braun, that group, and he could just kind of slip into his locker and not be seen if he didn't want to. And I think you see him catch himself now, like, oh, I need to be the one that speaks about things that are happening, good or bad, like the big drama and the bad drama. He's kind of the one that takes on that weight, and I think he's a major piece. He's a huge chapter. If you did a documentary on this team, he's a huge chapter, because he's been great. He's got a chance to go 30 and 100 this year.
Well, this is the thing, and if you look at, I'm just going to be very simple here. OPS plus since 2023, 28th in baseball, above Pete Alonso, Alex Bregman, Francisco Lindor, Byron Buxton. He's not an MVP candidate, both because the offense has taken a half step back and he's not playing the outfield, but he bangs, man. He's really good.
Yeah, he bangs, and he resonates when he's not at the plate. It's a hard thing to go from an athletic Gold Glove everyday player who plays the outfield to then be a DH. You don't see yourself as that. You know, athletes, they don't see themselves in that role. But he's stealing bases. Watching him go first to third still as beautiful as ever. He's got those long strides. He's very fast. That's all measurable now. And you can see still he's running better than he has in the last few years. He's obviously kind of back to a borderline all-star level, but he's the guy that against the better pitchers too, you know, in the big situations, I would say he and Brandon Woodruff are the two guys that are setting the tone for what you can be as a group. And the Brewers need that. You know, they're not the Dodgers. They're not the Cubs even, with all these veteran players, these all-stars who all kind of pick up their own piece of that. You know, I think Yelich is the one, and give Rhys Hoskins some credit. And certainly Contreras has been a great player. But, you know, mostly Yelich is the guy that is he's kind of the center spine of this team.
Yeah. Well, BA, thank you so much for spending some time with us and for, you know, Brewers splaining both us and our listeners. It really is just such a fascinating, invigorate. Like the Brewers, as someone who grew up on the East Coast, like I feel invigorated, and my relationship with baseball has improved because of the 2025 Brewers. And I hope that is the case for the people listening to this show. BA, where can people listen to you talk about anything, really?
Every day. I feel like every day get sick of my voice. TBS Tuesdays, obviously. That's ratcheting up now. We'll be in the postseason for TBS. Nice. We have the National League on TBS this year. So every matchup in the National League is going to be epic. I've done the Brewers twice in the postseason. That's always a little awkward, but no big deal.
Now you're a pro, though.
The Brewers.
You are a professional. You are a national broadcaster. I am confident that if you were calling Brewers games, that people will still enjoy them, even if they are not from Milwaukee.
Well, we got to do it. Yeah,
Brian
it's going to be great. We're looking forward to it. You guys are awesome, man. I appreciate all you do for the game, too. Always good to be with you.
Just stop. It's very kind. Thank you for so much of your time. Again, it's been awesome to get to know you over the last few years. It is a true privilege, and hope to see you in the postseason in some Midwestern city, ideally. But
we'll hold you to that. Let's go.
We will see. So thank you, VA. Enjoy the rest of the season. We'll talk to you soon, my friend.
All right, guys. Thanks.